Welcome to Corrective Consciousness episode 287, the podcast where we explore the inanity of pop culture. I was really close to screwing that up. I'm your host, vysethebold, and this is...
Lotus Prince, and what a save.
I was like, I have this tab open with the podcast number on it. Where is it? Oh, God.
Yeah.
Well, we were back here, and we kind of faked you out last time because we just had so much to talk about, with everything going on in the world. But we did want to return back to our original premise here that we were going at, and that was the Matrix franchise. So
yes, the Matrices.
The Matrices. So the last thing that we left off on, if I remember right, was the Animatrix. Is that correct?
Yes.
So did we talk about Enter the Matrix at all?
No.
Okay. So Enter the Matrix as well was released around the same time as the Animatrix. So we're not quite to the first sequel yet. But
are you sure? Because I could have sworn there was... I thought I remembered the Train Man who showed up in the game, and he was only in the third movie.
I'm pretty sure. But let me see.
I mean, they definitely had Niobe and Ghost because they're the playable characters, and they also showed up in the movies. I don't remember Ghost so much, but Niobe had more of a
released the same month as Matrix Reloaded. So yes,
okay.
The second movie. I remember Enter the Matrix came out like a week or two before the Matrix Reloaded. So this was like a big deal. This was also around the early point of the original Xbox, I remember as well. So
I had it on GameCube myself.
Actually, it turns out the GameCube version is probably the best version of this crappy game. But
I managed to beat this game, and I remember it's not great.
No, so here's the thing: is the Wachowski sisters really wanted to turn this into a multimedia franchise, and they really with a lot of lore spread all across different things, kind of like Kingdom Hearts. But
it's one of those things where it's cool that it's expansive, but it's annoying to actually follow.
Yeah, because if you really want to fill in all the blanks, you have to be into all of those things
and have access to them.
Yeah, have access to them.
What if you don't have an Xbox or whatever?
Yeah, and I mean they're big nerds as well, so this is the kinds of stuff that they are into. They are into anime, they are into movies, they are into video games, and sooner or later we'll also talk about the comics, which are also really they're actually really worth their time. I don't
think I knew that comics existed.
Yeah. There's actually two collections of comics, and they're really, really good. At least I have the first one.
Okay.
Or the first collection, and it's great.
Is it called the Comatrix?
No, it's just called the Matrix Comics. But the comic books. Yeah, let me see here. The official, the comics by various, it was also in 2003. So yeah, this was around that same time too. So I'll talk about that before we get into the second movie, because this is a big deal at the time. So we'll continue about the Enter the Matrix, but part of the problem always with licensed games is that you have to remember that they are a commercial for whatever is being made. So therefore, they are going to have a limited budget because their idea is to make money off of the license and be a companion and also get you hyped up for the thing, right? So inherently, they're not going to have a huge budget, and they put a lot more into it than they probably normally would, because what they did was they even filmed FMV sequences that would be in a movie. So they filmed Jada Pinkett and her counterpart actually, doing cutscenes of this game.
Yeah, and that's what I meant. It's like secret footage from the movies that you didn't get to see in the movies.
Yeah, I'm sure in the Blu-ray set, which basically has damn near anything you could ever want about the Matrix from that time period.
Yeah.
Probably has that stuff, because they even have like stuff like the MTV Movie Awards like parody.
Yeah. What if I fail? Dude, it's just the robot.
Yeah, I really recommend people watch that. We'll talk more about that after we get to the second one. Yeah, it's really funny. But yeah, it might be the best MTV.
Yeah, one of those. I think I remember
intro.
like Star Wars. I think Phantom Menace did something with that.
Yeah, but it was nearly this good.
To the Phantom Menace, but
yeah,
the Matrix one I never saw at the time, but it is very funny.
It's even funnier if you had watched the movie, because it really takes the piss out of the movie.
Yeah, it does.
And apparently the Wachowskis liked it enough to want to put it on the
because it's funny, because you can obviously tell that it's somebody interacting with pre-recorded movie footage. That's what makes it funny.
Yeah,
it's like they're not responding to them directly, even though it's supposed to look like they are. It's just funny.
But yeah, we'll get back to that. We have to talk about Enter the Matrix. So here's the thing: is, remember, we've been talking about like bullet time as a phenomenon, and it was that was coined by Remedy Software, who were the makers of Max Payne, and so for all intents and purposes, in terms of the style of action, Max Payne was the Matrix game that you wanted.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, you weren't doing crazy Matrix martial arts, but you dove while firing your guns at the same time in slow motion. That was cool as hell.
And it was a good game. It was a really good game, and it also had a noir storyline that kind of fit the aesthetics of the Matrix. The Matrix is cyberpunk, but cyberpunk is noir, but in the future. So
it checks out. The Matrix has a lot of aspects of you mentioned the manga before, but the Matrix has a lot of aspects of Ghost in the Shell. It was kind of sort of a Ghost in the Shell movie before they went ahead and made an actual Ghost in the Shell movie.
Yeah, it was kind of a blend of a bunch of things that everybody liked at the time. Aeon Flux, The Invisibles, Grant Morrison's The Invisibles, plus anime up the wazoo, Ghost in the Shell, all that stuff from back then. Armitage the Third, a whole bunch of stuff from that
Tons
era.
of religious symbolism, because you could just do that.
Yeah, and that was popular in movies at the time too. This was around the same time as Dogma and stuff like that. This was a big time for this kind of thing. Anyway, we kind of already had the Matrix movie or video game that we wanted, and then they made this, and everybody was like, okay, well, it's just going to be Max Payne, so it'll be good. So this was a very hyped up game, and everybody bought it because the second movies were really hyped up.
Yeah, and it really wasn't great.
And it's not good. So the action is just so stilted, and
it's awkward. And you
really
can only
bad.
do the cool stuff if you do the slow-mo Matrix stuff. You can't walk up walls normally.
Yeah.
It looks cool when you do it in slow motion, but you must be in slow motion.
Yeah, so it was really disappointing. It was a very janky game too.
Yes.
In terms of its physics, in terms of how you interacted with the agents in it, it just
you can learn to adjust to it. I beat the game, but you shouldn't have to beat a game in spite of itself.
So really, the characters are it's like a heist story, isn't it? They're trying to get a code and then bring it to somewhere in the second movie, I think is the idea, right?
It might have been. Although you get into some weird shenanigans that wouldn't be in the movies. Remember how in the second movie they mentioned werewolves exist. This guy's a werewolf. He can only die from silver bullets. This gun has a silver bullet and it just shoots him. And I'm like, what the fuck was the point of... you fight a guy called, Vamp, I think, in a library, and I guess it's implied he's a vampire. They never really pushed that but you're like, hey, he's probably a vampire, I guess.
Another vampire named Vamp. Wow, from that era.
Jesus. Yeah, well, yeah, it was from that era, wasn't it? I think he was. Oh no! You know what? You're right. It was not, because Vamp was the Metal Gear Solid 2 guy. I think he was called Vlad.
Oh, okay.
Which is even more on the nose.
Was he powered by nanomachines as well?
He was not.
He was a machine. Turns out.
Actually, yeah.
But anyway,
it might have been Vlad. I'll have to look it up, but it might have been just Vlad, which is again like really on the nose. I'm gonna type it in right now.
Yeah. So, I guess what I'm getting at is like it kind of just whetted your appetite for what it was, but in the end, it just made you disappointed to want to be in it, and it really kind of was really disappointing. It was one of those games that was hyped up for the time, and then when it finally released, it was just like, oh god, what is this? Like, I wanted to have fun with this. And the thing is, like, a game like that doesn't need to be very long for it to be like to fulfill what you want out of it, right? Like it could have been like even like a 5-hour game, and people would have been happy with it if it were good, but it wasn't.
It had interesting ideas. The stuff you do is pretty cool, but like you said, it just doesn't play very well.
Yeah,
probably the coolest part of the game is when you fight Trinity in this big Zen garden. So you can do slow motion moves and like knock people through like the big bridge and everything. Like it's really kick ass when you pull it off, but like you are fighting the game while you're playing it at all times.
Yeah, it's really a shame, because like it was one of those things, like it was one of those things that everybody wanted to like too, and you just couldn't, it was savaged in the media, in the games media at the time, in the magazines at the time. So yeah, it was just not a fun time, and it's really a shame, because I think they really want like the Wachowskis really wanted it to be good. The Wachowski sisters are, like I said, are nerds. They're fans of this kind of stuff, so they put a lot of love into putting the story together and filming that stuff, and also it was made by Shiny, which was from a previous generation, was a fun company. Do you remember what Shiny was?
I don't even know if obviously I've heard of it because I played that game, but I don't recognize that name.
So Shiny is the successor to the Playmates brand of video games. So they were the people that made Earthworm Jim and all of the related games. So Shiny,
now that you mention it, I can see a strong similarity between Enter the Matrix and Earthworm Jim.
So yeah. Shiny Entertainment made a few well-known video games here. We'll go over Earthworm Jim 2, MDK, Wild 9, Messiah, another weird game, and Sacrifice, and Enter the Matrix up until this point.
Yeah, Enter the Matrix is the only one of those I've ever touched.
Well, you had at least heard of MDK and Earthworm Jim 1 and 2, right?
I've seen the name MDK, and I've watched Earthworm Jim be played through, but I've never touched it.
Well, Earthworm Jim 1 and 2 are janky games, but they're really a lot of fun. Like the production values are really high, so there's a reason why people like those games, and they're also really funny on their own without like needing a source material to be funny. And that was especially during a time when games weren't generally funny. So, but yeah, so it was just a big disappointment. And then, but the really good stuff was in the Animatrix and the comics. Now, right around this time, the Wachowskis started up their own comic book brand called Burly Man Comics. And I actually bought this a long time ago. I think it's one of the first printings of this, and they really made a really good collection here. And it's kind of like in the same vein of the Animatrix. It's like anthology kind of stuff. So like it doesn't have its own storyline. It's just vignettes of like stuff that happened within the Matrix universe. and it's really good. It's one of the most iconic stories. Like, here's the thing: when talking about the Matrix, they don't really delve much into the real world stuff. Like, even in the sequels, they're they don't. They basically are just say that, like, the cities of Zion is close to the center of the earth where it's warm, and it sucks because, you know, the humans are in a cave. And
yeah, I was just gonna say, it's just everybody living in caves. That's Zion.
Yeah, and that's it. Like, basically, those are where all the humans are, for the most part. And they don't really delve into, like, what do they eat, or like why or how. They have that food, the mush that they talk about in the original movie, but they don't tell you where it comes from or anything like that.
Yeah.
Like how do you cultivate that? Like in a cave. So one of the more memorable stories in the comics is that there's a story about a guy who basically became a botanist and made a type of wheat that could survive on the planet in its current state, and I really enjoyed that. And it was a really good story. And there's also a story specifically about the first robot that rebelled from the second Renaissance. The first Renaissance, I think, is what it's called in the Animatrix. So they expand upon that particular robot story, which was pretty cool. So I definitely recommend the comics. I'm sad to say that I don't have the other half of it. I only have the first trade paperback, but it's excellent. I really enjoyed it. And I guess we can start talking about The Matrix Reloaded. So when this came out, people had, like, reserved tickets for this. This was like a big deal. I remember my friends got together and got IMAX tickets, like, and we went all the way to Pennsylvania for it when we lived in New Jersey. It's actually pretty close to my town where I live currently. But back then that was like a big deal, and we had somebody's mom take us there. And we had even slept over their house in order to go see it, and it was like a big deal. So the second movie is... They try to add so much to the mythos, and they don't explain.
Well, that's the big complaint about the movie, is there's a lot of exposition and just dry talking scenes.
Yeah, and a lot of it is explanation, but, like, they just tell you lore rather than actually explaining anything. They're just like, there are ghosts, like they're ghosts, and like any supernatural phenomenon are, like, programs that were put in the system in order to be to police the system, just like the agents are. That is an interesting concept, but they don't really expand upon it at all.
Yeah, well, I mean, it was just like what I said earlier. Like, did you know this guy's a werewolf who's immune to all forms of bullets except silver, and then she shoots him dead? Oh, that was a silver bullet.
Yeah.
What the fuck was that scene?
Yeah, what was that?
Thanks for that. You didn't even have to have that scene.
You have the Merovingian who talks a lot.
Sure does.
Who's a cool character, I guess, like a suave character, I should say. But, like, and then, like, gives, like, basically a gag where he gives a woman an orgasm with the program that he puts in her food.
Yeah, which was that definitely served a useful purpose.
Yeah, and more and more you think about it, it's just like, oh god, that's not good at all. Like,
well, he's a skeezy character. I mean,
yeah, exactly.
Like, okay, but, like, just what the fuck? Like, what was any of that? Like,
yeah. I'm here to watch Neo fight these people and, like, quell the rebellion. What is all this crap?
Yeah. Although, speaking of which, when they get to the fight in his chateau, which leads up to the highway chase scene, like, that's probably, like, that whole thing is maybe the best sequence in the trilogy.
So the action in this movie is particularly good.
That highway chase holds up today.
It is one of the best action movie. Like, it has some of the best action sequences of any movie I've ever seen. but the story and the exposition like really detracts from it. It really does.
Yeah, you really have to put in the time before you get to a scene that you might enjoy.
And a lot of it is like written in a way to sound smart.
Yeah, but, well, especially when the architect starts talking.
Yeah.
They make fun of that and that movie thing as well, like concordantly, ergo. Like,
yeah, there's a lot of high vocabulary and high concept stuff, and really, like a lot of the audience just like came back baffled out of it because they don't know what the fuck they're talking about, and really, they even if you dissect it all, they were really just introducing themes, but without expanding upon them in a lot of that stuff, and that's not smart writing. You want to introduce things like organically, not with exposition, right? Exposition's like the worst form of conveying information in a movie.
And that entire architect scene is just that. He's just talking at Neo, and Neo's like, "So what does that mean?" He's like, "Well, I'll tell you," and it just goes on forever.
Yeah, and anybody will tell you that like a voiceover is like one of the worst ways that you can deliver
yeah, there are ways it has worked pretty well, but typically it's just like, why don't you show it? Yeah,
that's the exception. I mean, you're in a movie, you have the language of mise en scène, use it. Like that is what movies excel at. They excel at conveying information through the moving image. So that's their whole point. So if you're going to read a book at me, it's not using the medium to its fullest.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, I have to mention this as well because at the time this was hyped up, but still kind of lamented at the time. The Smiths scene where he fights a whole bunch of Smiths.
Yeah, that scene was insane when you saw it for the very first time.
When you saw it for the first time, but then like each subsequent time it lost its luster because of the amount of they really could have used clever like green screen techniques or something instead of what they did, but instead they basically made a video game movie cutscene.
Yeah, and you can tell like when he starts just like knocking him in all sorts of directions.
Yeah, and it doesn't look good. Even back then, it looked good for the time, but even then, you were like, "Why'd they do it like this?" Like you could have just used like digital composite blending on a bunch of like extras faces and just added Smith's face to that in a composite way. Because at the time you could do stuff like that with computers, but instead they decided to go the CG route, like entirely CG route, and now it's very mannequin-y. It looks like mannequins are fighting, and there's no detail in the skin, for instance, and stuff like that. So, it's really a shame because that's a cool idea to have Neo fight a large group of Smiths that overwhelm him, even with being as powerful as he is, right? So that's a cool idea, but they really I think they botched that, and that's a shame. But the highway chase scene is really where it's at. That's the reason to watch this movie.
It's a three-way fight. There's Trinity and Morpheus. There's the agents, and there's the albino twins. And the agents and the albinos are not on the same side, so it's just everyone's going for the keymaker. It's amazing.
It's really good, and it's on the level of the the rescuing Morpheus scenes in the original movie. It's up there. And you say it's even more so your favorite.
That scene is ridiculous.
It's really good.
It just keeps going, but in a good way.
Yeah, and what's really cool about that scene is it's not overdone with digital special effects. It's really a lot of practical stuff is being done during that, and that's the way. That's why the first movie excelled.
You know what's like a thing to remember though?
Yeah,
is the wow factor in the theater. When, because you know how it gets crazy when Trinity's on the motorcycle, like speeding through traffic to get to the truck.
So cool.
But then all of a sudden she has to turn around, and now she's speeding against highway traffic, and you're like, you've got to be kidding me! Like that was like the coolest transition
of all things, which is like the coolest motorcycle that you can think of, even back then.
I'll take your word. To me, it was motorcycle.
Well, it's basically the Ferrari of motorcycles. Like,
I mean, that's over my head.
You can't get any thing higher performance than a Ducati.
Okay.
It's just it's a high performance Italian motorbike. So anyway, there was also a lot of marketing going along with this movie. I mean, they had a cell phone that was in the movie that you could buy. This was back during flip phones, of course, but
yeah.
This was a big deal. Now, in the end, I think people enjoyed it, but they were kind of baffled by it as well.
Yeah, it was definitely not even I that highway chase scene is freaking king, but even I was I prefer the first movie.
Yeah, it was one of those that was cool, but what did we watch? Kind of things, and also the first one was better. And so it kind of, after all of that, with all the marketing blitz and all that, it people kind of felt let down by that second movie. I really do believe that the kind of the luster of it kind of petered out, even despite its good qualities, which it does have. I'm not totally ragging on it. In fact, if anything, you can come away with on this is that there were good parts to even the worst parts of all the Matrix franchise.
Oh,
and
sure.
there's thought behind a lot of it. It's just whenever it got bloated is when it got bad. And I feel like the first movie was very smart. So it's my belief that the Wachowskis really were probably really nervous about the second movie. To the point where they had to prove that they were still smart. And I think they overdid it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You don't need to prove that you're smart. You already proved it. With that first movie is one of the best movies of all time. I still believe that. It really changed filmmaking at the time. So I think that the second movie is oh geez, what do we do to top that? I need to be even smarter than before, and then you end up really just alienating the audience, and in the end not being smarter. You're just being obtuse, rather than being clever, and also not completing what your thoughts at the same time. It was almost like there was too many things that they wanted to talk about in that movie that they didn't have time for, on top of it all. So, and they didn't have a good way of conveying all that information either. So, in the end, people were just it's cool, but
Yep.
And even teenagers thought that way at the time. It wasn't just adults that had good taste.
Because again, there's multiple scenes where the movie just talks at you.
Yeah,
and you're
exactly.
All right.
Yeah, so I think we can leave off there. That's a good stopping point, and move on to fan stuff. And then we can move on to the third movie. We also have 2 more video games to talk about. We have
one that you can't play, and the other that
you won't want to.
Yes, yeah.
And yeah, I don't think there's much else until we get to the fourth movie. So yeah.
And so we got a few comments here. School Filmer says, once again, Konami disappoints. Anyway, got Overcooked All You Can Eat last week. It was half off, which is a nice deal for 2 games and all its DLC. Now I just need somebody nearby to play with. And then also school filmer.
I have that problem
Favorite
too.
swear words? I do have a couple to describe how I feel right now. Pandemics of the nomad soul kind. Extreme weather, a constant feeling of stress, knowing that the facial paralysis still hasn't completely let go, a lack of motivation and washing machines.
Jeez.
But for the interest of time, I'll skip listing them.
Wow.
And then
sounds like you're going through a lot. My condolences.
Yeah, for real. And then Living Corpse was quoting me, if everyone is an asshole, then odds are likely that you are the asshole. And then he says, you gotta be careful with this line of reasoning. Like, really observe everyone else and yourself, because if they all come from the same dysfunctional family, or toxic work environment, or fan base, or similar issues like drug abuse or drinking, or small racist town in the middle of nowhere, then they could still be the asshole, but yeah, in this case, it's Konami.
Well, yeah, I agree with that. I mean, there could be just somebody who is just straight up being abused in a situation. So I'm not entirely saying that, but
yeah, it's not fair to look at like your neighbors and say they're all assholes. Like, well, they're all from the same house. But I mean, like, if everybody in your life, like, it's not a guarantee, but it's a red flag.
Yeah.
And then the question, going back to Ross, 2 more. What profession other than your own would you like to attempt, and what would you not like to do?
So I actually always go back to this whenever I'm asked this question. And it's kind of funny. I kind of got it from the 5th Hitchhiker's Guide book. Did you ever read the 5th one? Mostly Harmless.
I don't. I think the last thing I read was So Long and Thanks for All the Fish, but I couldn't tell you much about any of them at this point because it's been a very long time.
Okay, so I always kind of thought of my zen of being a sandwich shop owner, like just making sandwiches and having fun creating sandwiches and making sandwiches for people, and also being a bartender at the same time and making pizza and ice cream. I've always liked that combination of things for some reason. I've always wanted to be a proprietor, but like every time I ever think about it, like in reality, I don't want to do it. You know, it's one of those, like, I like the art of making a sandwich. So I kind of like doing it at home. But like doing it for a bunch of people that wouldn't appreciate me for it, like kind of like takes away the luster of it. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I have a home bar that if you were to take it out of my house and put it in a restaurant, it would fit there. Like, it's that full featured. And kind of part of the reasoning behind that is, like, I wanted to serve my friends, but I flirted with being a bartender at some point because our friend of the show, Perry, was one at one point, and I kind of liked the idea of it because I was in financial services and it was something different, and I also like the art of cocktail making. But at the same time, every time I think about it, I've been in service roles. I've been in customer service roles, and I've worked in the public and in retail situations and in restaurant situations. And I know, like, dealing with the public is not it's not fun. It just isn't. My wife is in a retail environment. You have no control over the types of people that come into your establishment.
Yep.
And whether they're going to treat you well and whether they're going to appreciate what you do. Not only that, but you have to clean up after them. Like, I always thought to myself, yeah, I would like to run a restaurant, but then I'd have to clean the toilet too. Like, I don't want to do that for, like, I know what happens in public toilets. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to have to deal with that. Like, I dealt with it when I was a server. Like, do I want to do that for the rest of my life? No, I just want to make sandwiches. So therefore, I'm just going to continue my cooking and cocktail making at home as a hobby, and share it with my friends and family. Which is the best of that, because they're going, more than likely going to be good guests, gracious guests in my home. While I'm making something for them, and they're going to appreciate that I put in time and effort into making something for them. But do I want somebody who's complaining about the level of whatever ingredient that I use, and sending it back to, the kitchen, even though I tried really hard on it. Yeah. And, do I want all that? Somebody who doesn't realize the amount of time that I put into something and tried to get it the way it was, I don't think I want that. So I guess that kind of answers both, because it's one of those things. It's just like, in a perfect world, I would like to do that, but it's not a perfect world, and it's very risky to run, a business like that, with food costs and food spoilage and all that other stuff involved. So I'll let you speak, Lotus.
Sure. I mean, if I could get into a different line of work, I don't know. I think voice acting might be interesting, or even just voiceovers or whatever.
You'd be great with it for that. Yeah.
Like,
really
honestly,
cool.
I don't know how great my range is for emotions, but I just like the idea of doing that kind of thing.
I just think that your voice is very iconic to me. Like, at being your friend, I like listening to
you
voice.
Recognize the sound of it and everything.
Exactly, and it would be kind of like H. John Benjamin. He doesn't change his voice at all.
Yeah, it's
in
just
any
his
of his
voice.
roles.
Yeah.
He Coach McGurk and Archer and Bob are all the same voice, right?
Sure.
I mean, he does have voices, but you're just like, that's it, just H. John Benjamin. Just,
yeah, exactly.
Like, he's what is it? Jimmy Pesto Jr. Like when in Bob's Burgers, and he's also Assy McGee, so he like muffles his mouth like.
Oh, I didn't know that was him.
You didn't know he was Assy McGee? Oh,
because I only ever saw the commercial, so I didn't get much of the voice.
when you listen to it again, you'll be like, oh, that is him just mumbling.
Fair enough. Yeah.
But I think you could just be you, and it'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean, if that were the case, then that would be amazing.
Yeah.
For jobs I don't want, again, this is kind of low-hanging fruit, and you said something kind of similar. But I mean, I used to work retail, and it wasn't terrible. Like, I didn't have like a million horrible customers or whatever. Probably because I was the cashier. It's like, if you're gonna yell at somebody, it's probably the manager.
Customer service.
Yeah, like, so even if they had a problem with me personally, which is, I could probably count that on my one
all you
hand,
did was ring people up and take their money, right?
What do you want from me? So, like, even if they had a personal problem with me, they'd still probably take it to the manager. Like, I would have to, like, personally slight them. But I would prefer not to go back into retail, or, like, I never worked restaurants, but I would not like to do that for basically the reasons you've described. And even if everything is working as planned, like, I mean, I did not typically have to worry about the customers themselves when I worked retail, but, like, what a boring job, man. You are literally just standing there all day.
Yeah, I also, I thought I wanted to be a teacher. We met in teaching. Teaching, at secondary education, grad school, and I found out that I didn't want to do that. Like, I think I would like to teach college. You teach college, and
yeah, I will say that is, like, you sure have your homework, but you don't have the administration up your ass. You don't have parents up your ass. You don't have typically students up your ass. Like, you do your job. Yeah. And the students there are generally respectful because they're paying for this shit. And if they don't want to be there, then with very few exceptions, they don't come.
Yeah.
With my particular class, they are obligated to show up.
Yeah.
So I might get people who, like, clearly are not interested in being there, but, like, they're not going to disrupt the class because, like, I wouldn't be surprised if other students got in their cases before I did.
Yeah.
It's like, shut the fuck up, man. I'm paying for this.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, being a high school teacher is a very thankless job, especially in America. They are not respected.
It really, yeah, like, it's one of those things where, like, they look back. I had a really great teacher 10 years ago, but at the time, oof.
Yeah. Both my parents were high school teachers, and they said that when they left the profession, which was about 15 years ago at this point, they said it just got worse and worse. And they said that all of their friends that stayed in it said it got even worse from there.
Yeah, I don't doubt it.
And
teachers are overworked and underpaid over here.
Not only that, but the political climate is just getting worse and worse and worse.
Yeah, that's another thing. This is the case at university, but, like, you don't notice this unless something crazy happens, but you don't notice this as a student. But like K through 12 teachers are very cliquey. Like the drama is real. Like stuff that I never would have thought about because I was like, what, 7? I'm not thinking about this shit. But it's like, oh, this 3rd grade teacher is like, she's sniping at me while I'm talking to my principal about it. It's like what? Like all this stuff is happening.
I was surprised. Like the cooperating teacher that I had, the first one.
Yeah, well, you had a bad deal.
I did have a bad deal.
Why do you even sign up to become a cooperating teacher at that point?
Yeah, but that's besides the point. I'm not going to get into that saga. Yeah. But the point is, she was a terrible human being, and would just like look for reasons to get kids in trouble and to like be difficult to the other teachers, like just awful.
Yeah, I see stuff like that, like on Reddit every so often, where people are like, "Oh yeah, teachers are just assholes who want the excuse to be able to push kids around," and like, obviously that's not the intent, but there are absolutely a whole lot of people who are like that. Well, it's like, why did you? Or maybe they're like really old and they just become jaded by the job, but it's like, why are you still here?
Well, I don't think maybe that's in the intention, but it's what it turns into, right?
Yeah.
It's one of those things like the reason why some people become cops, right? It's not every cop, obviously.
Or even retail workers who just had enough and they learn how to be like, all right, shut up, we're moving on. Like they just become like they've become so jaded to the students that they're just ready for students to start shit with them, so they start shit first, and the students hate them, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Oh yeah, no, it can be straight up awful. So like and you have to answer to a lot of political situations, and I can't even imagine what it's like to try to teach somebody just basic civil rights history right now. Like that was
you're talking about deal. That kind of thing. I meant like
internal politics
in the faculty room, politicking with like their cliques. But yeah, like people trying to be liars about U.S. history. We were founded by a bunch of genocidal racists. What are you gonna do?
Yeah,
talk about it.
I cannot even think with the way that discourse is right now. Like back when we were going through high school, we learned about civil rights, and like there was nothing but positivity associated with it. I never remember any kids dissenting against it or anything like that. It was just like, oh, Rosa Parks did this, and Martin Luther King did that. Now, it was rudimentary at best, and wasn't.
One thing I will say, what were you taught about Rosa Parks?
We were taught the lie. We weren't taught the real.
She was just some woman who got tired and wanted to sit down. That's not what fucking happened.
she threw a stunt.
Yeah, she did it as a political move. It wasn't like, oh, this poor old woman. So even then it was diminished, but we still at least learned who she was.
It was a political stunt that worked.
Yes.
At that. It did exactly what she intended it to do, and because she was one of the higher secretaries at the NAACP at the time, and they came up with a plan for her to do it, and they had their publicity already put in line for it. Now, it was a good thing that she did, but like that's not what we were taught.
Yeah, we were taught that what she did was incidental, and then people
correct.
got mad at everybody for dunking on some poor old woman like that. Like, so that greatly undercuts her own like effectiveness.
Yeah. No, it's actually she's a lot more shrewd and tactical for back then. And honestly, all of the real history, like with all the dirty parts entwined in it, like all the backstabbing and dirty politics and that have been going through life all along that nobody told us about, is all stuff I learned later on by reading.
And not only that, the fact that this is glossed over is why there's such nationalism. Like, when people say, like, America never did anything wrong, like, a lot of them really believe it because they have no reason not to believe it. Like, they don't know how shitty the past is because, like, their teachers glossed over it by choice or not.
You know what?
So, like, well, why are you getting so mad at America? Where did that come from? And, like, they're really asking.
The mythologized founding fathers are the thing I still don't understand. I get they're on our money and shit, but like were selfish business people trying to come up with a system that would work for them at that time that exploited willfully slavery and native peoples at the time.
Yeah. Well, they don't teach you that part.
It's ridiculous. There's two great original sins baked into the fabric of the nation, and we're supposed to like hold them up like they're gods or something.
Because they wrote the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. That's all you need.
I don't get it.
They were geniuses at law. That's all you need, right?
I don't get it. Like they were smart people. I'm not saying they weren't.
Yeah, they genuinely did do the things that people say they did, but they were also like rapists and slave owners. Or at least Jefferson was, but no doubt the others were.
Stabbed each other in the back all the time and hated each other as well as worked with each other. Like these people were in their own political situations with themselves at the time.
No doubt they weren't all one political party.
Exactly. They were
even back in the day. There were two political parties. They weren't Democrats and Republicans, but there were two political parties.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I digress on all this stuff. But like, I imagine that there's some snot-nosed kid that just is a Twitter warrior or all over Facebook about whatever nonsense is being spread there, and just brings it to every single fact gets challenged by some nonsense that they read online with no corroboration or thought to context. And I'd be very afraid of that.
I wonder how much in the classroom, because like we weren't there for the internet stuff. Internet was pretty new when we were in school,
sure,
and there wasn't the degree of social media that there is. But I really wonder in classrooms if they really they always used to push like, don't use a Wikipedia as a source, use whatever it cites as a source. But like, I wonder how much effort there is into like fact checking to make sure that when you cite something, you're not just citing bullshit.
Or even like, how many people just buy papers off of a website anymore on a particular given subject?
Oh, that's absolutely a problem.
Yeah.
You might know about this. It's not the most effective thing in the world, but it's pretty good. Have you heard of Turnitin?
No. Is that where you can outsource a paper?
No, it's the opposite.
Oh, okay.
When a paper is uploaded and run through Turnitin, it runs that paper through like all of the other papers that have been uploaded through it, and it sees how much of a match your stuff is to someone else's paper. So you're always going to get a match for direct quotes,
sure,
because that's supposed to happen.
Yeah.
But if I see that like the intro paragraph, like your whole intro paragraph, except for like 3 words that were changed, match someone else's, like that's a red flag.
Wow, yeah.
So like if it comes up like above a certain percentage, then I'll try to check where it came from and see if that was actually a coincidence, which it often is, or if you just stole somebody's shit.
or you stole from yourself and you did a paper before and
actually I ran into an innocent version of that. It was pretty funny. I've never seen this in my life, but one of my students' papers had a 100% match, like literally the whole paper. I was like, what? But it turns out they'd uploaded it to like a tutor before, so they literally matched the paper that they were sending to me. That was just kind of, I'm like, 100? That's impossible. But like, no, like, yeah, that was
lazy.
Like, even your name? But yes, actually. So that was just a funny coincidence. But what's convenient for me is that a lot of the students I teach are English language learners. So when all of a sudden there's like 3 sentences that are like, the writing style is radically different.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
you can always detect it, yeah.
I had one student talking about neocons, which, number 1, do you even know what that means? And number 2, wildly off topic. What are you doing?
It's kind of like VidCons, but they're new.
It's just like VidCon, yeah. Precisely. I gotta play the new VidCon and unlock the final gun, where it's an acronym, the FINALGUN. I don't know what it stands for, but who gives a shit?
Oh, man. I wish that had continued on. Oh my god.
Yeah.
What a shame.
I at least have my, not joking, Cyber Dwarf body pillow as a memento.
You might have the only thing that was produced for that game. Like
almost certainly.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen other copies of it online, but yeah, that thing, like that's the only merch that game's probably ever gonna get.
Yeah. We're of course talking about
Charles Barkley 2, the game that never was.
Yeah, Barkley's Shut Up and Jam Gaiden, and its sequel.
The sequel Barkley 2. I wish.
Yeah, what a
closest
shame.
You'll ever get to that is the little demo they had for it.
Yeah, and just go ahead and play some Lazarol games to make up for it.
Yeah, Fucker in the Woods, Gulag, Rome, do it.
It's the same.
And he's made other stuff too, but those are the ones that I have personally played.
Yeah. I love his sense of humor. Oh my god, it's so good.
Yeah, I told you this on the phone before, but he made a Final Fantasy VIII like werewolf like fan fiction. Like here it is. The
sounds
the
right.
fic you've all been waiting for. Like what? I didn't realize it was FF8 at first. I start reading and it has like Zell. Like no, come on.
He really captures the early 2000s weeaboo aesthetic like to like the best.
Yeah, and we addressed it in our Let's Plays too. He's referencing like Metal Gear Solid 3. You get it or you don't. Like the bad guy shows up and says Kuwabara, Kuwabara. Do you even remember that?
That's the lightning thing, right?
Yeah, Vulcan.
Yeah.
Yeah, that, I mean, like that's the thing Japanese people say as a superstition to not get hit by lightning.
Yeah, sure.
It's just like that thing you say. But I'd never heard that before. Like it's just something Vulcan said, and they never explained it because a Japanese person would instantly know what that meant. But Americans are like, what? And it's just never explained.
Yeah, no, he's just so good at like the pathetic anime lover
yeah
attitude from that time, but done so with an intimate knowledge, so he more than likely is making fun of himself.
Well, that's the beauty of it. Yeah, a really good parody isn't just this is stupid. Like you have to love it to make fun of it.
Yeah.
That specifically.
Yeah.
Like again, with Fucker in the Woods, like the title screen was Nekopara. I didn't get that. I thought it was weird visual novel. And then our friend Mr. Ryu was like, that's Nekopara. And then I Google image compared. It's like 1-to-1. It was like the same thing.
Yeah, no,
I didn't even get that.
He has an intimate knowledge of weeaboo bullshit.
Yeah, and like Fucker 3 was like Dark Souls' or Dark Souls 3's or something, like character creator screen, even though that's not relevant to the actual game at all.
Oh, what a genius. I love him. And he's
even
putting
when
out that
first start
crap
playing
for
the
free.
game, like it's the Metal Gear Solid, like when you press start,
yeah,
and then it goes Fucker in the Woods, which is like Resident Evil.
Resident Evil.
Like, there's so much like immediately.
Yeah. It's just like you only get the full experience if you're ingrained in that culture.
Yeah, if you're like pushing like a little younger than middle age, like we are.
Yeah, exactly. We're.
I mean, like anyone 30s. Could go back and play those games, but like
no,
they're really ingrained in our heads because it was our formative years.
It was a time and place during when we were teenagers. Really, I mean,
I would say aesthetic.
I would say to go back and play Metal Gear Solid 3, but yeah.
Well, there is a bunch of stuff you can go back and play, but it's also capturing an aesthetic that teens had at the time, which like you know those stupid Facebook memes like kids today will never understand easily explainable concept. Go fuck yourself, Grandpa.
People dressing up as Neo for the hell of it.
Well, I mean, they never understand that. You could fucking Google it, but like there was a certain like attitude that's much harder to look up on the internet. Just like the way people were thinking when they dressed up as Neo, like that. So cool, I got a samurai sword, like that kind of thing. Like that's harder to capture.
Like the kid who thought he was really good at martial arts but had only ever been to one like karate class. That was always a thing.
Yeah, don't you know I took martial arts? And he like awkwardly swings a nunchuck and doesn't really know how to swing it, but he hasn't hit himself, so okay. No, you know what my favorite thing was? I mentioned this before. Remember when Lasagna Cat came back?
Oh yeah.
This is a weird connection, but
I know what you're going to talk about. Yeah.
Well, that one video where they're doing that like edgelord make your own videos at home kind of thing, like.
Oh yeah.
But the thing with that is that they were playing back that video on Windows Media Player, which is already kind of funny, and they had like,
Real Player's the funny one, if you ask me.
Yeah, and they had an AIM conversation with like stupid usernames like Dog142 and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But if you go to YouTube and look up those usernames, they exist. They made channels for those, which is insane. But the thing that really made me laugh, because like I know exactly what it's doing, was it had like the Garfield's, live action Garfield character, but like it had him as the cool teen wearing like a Venom shirt or something. That was a really cool thing back in the day.
Yes.
But where he has like a katana and he's just swinging it like in front of a camera to look cool, like wha-cha, wha-cha. But the part that really, really slayed me, and you just kind of have to see it to like see what I mean, but like he's doing his sword swings and he's stepping forward as he does it, because that's usually what you do when you swing a sword. So he gets too close to the camera, so he has to reset. So he steps back a couple steps. He like walks backwards a little bit to get a few paces away. But when he does it, he just idly like twirls the sword once in his hand, like how you would do with like just doing like a spin, like you might do with like a tennis racket or something. And that's so real. Like that little idle thing. I don't know how they even thought to do that, but that's absolutely brilliant. It's such a little thing that like makes me believe it, even though it's a guy in a Garfield costume.
It's man, like I wish I could. It's one of those things. It's like you have to explain the way life was for nerdy kids who wanted to make movies and wanted to be
your
in movies.
Bad video effects in your
exactly.
mom's front yard with like the tree, and you're fighting with your friends who you're both wearing sunglasses, but you're dressed like high school kids because like
that's what you have.
You're not a Hollywood producer. Yeah,
exactly.
It's very funny.
Yeah.
I mean, like Perry made like a Monsters and Lit movie with like an interpretation of a particular scene from Macbeth, and like it involves like katanas. It's so fucking good, dude.
The thing is, I think he would do it the same way now.
Oh no! I'm conflating two movies. He did do a Macbeth thing, which involves a little like bottle rocket thing, which was cool because it's fired from the sleeve. Like, I'm firing it. My bad. The katana thing was something different. It was a Monsters and Lit. It was a vampire movie. That's my fault. Where I was the vampire, but I didn't have any vampire teeth or anything. It's just like, just take his word.
I'm a vampire.
We didn't do that bullshit. We just talked normally. But like, we had a very brief like katana fight. And it's like, you're looking at this like, dude, come on.
They're like katanas you buy at like Chinatown or some convention or some shit.
I don't know where he got them, but it probably was a convention. I remember the one, I think the one I had was like a reverse blade katana, like Rurouni Kenshin, like Kenshin Himura, where if I were to hit you with what looks like the blade end, it would be blunt. I don't know where he got that.
Perry has some like gem, like really fun stuff that he owns. Like,
yeah, he does.
Like the Kenshiro bottle cap opener that goes when you open up the
it's just
the beer.
It's just the one time like snap.
It's so
perfect. It's just like a fist. It's great. It's all you need.
Love it.
I hit the pressure point on the bottle. The cap is now off.
You are already drunk.
Yeah.
Not in that way, but in the other way.
Oh yeah, the past, not the past participle, like the past.
The pluperfect.
Yeah, the pluperfect subjunctive. You already have having had been drunk. It's not even a thing in English.
Anyway, I think we covered.
Yeah. So anyway, jobs we wouldn't want to have.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I want one last thing. I once was a salesperson as well. I've had a hard time. I had a hard time until recently finding the thing that I wanted to do, because you really don't know whether you would like something until you do it. That's another thing I'll tell anybody, like you know, with my potential children in the future growing up, you know. Like, you don't really know that you'll like something until you actually do it. And because, like, it involves a lot more and a lot less than you think. Like, you know, like, you might just be in it for, like, the noble parts of whatever job that, you know, you're after. But, like, you don't know about the day-to-day and how soul-crushing it could be until you get there.
Yeah, it's like, oh, wait, I just realized I need money to continue to live.
Yeah, exactly. So, I guess my thought is, like, you know, the good thing about I guess the situation that I was in is that, like, I had education in a lot of different areas, so I was that gave me the freedom to move around, and I got into an area where I wasn't selling things anymore, and I wasn't a teacher, and selling things was the absolute worst. I could tell you, because the stress level just does not work.
The whole premise of the job is trying to push things on people who initially don't want it.
Or need it. Or even is detrimental to them.
Yeah.
So that really did not agree with my personality. Any of that. And it really didn't agree with my personality to... I would more want to use that knowledge to push people if it were going to help them. However, if I knew it wasn't going to help them, I still needed to do it as a salesperson, and that really messed me up. And it should mess you up, honestly. I was not. I was a good salesman in spite of all that, because people I did find ways to make it work within my own ethics. However, there were plenty of people that were way more successful than I was because they didn't have the ethics that I did. And it was just soul crushing. And it's also a role where people, where your management is never happy with you. They may be happy for you for 5 minutes, and then they are not happy with you again. Like, what have you sold today? Like,
yeah.
I just closed a $5 million deal yesterday that took me, 3 months to work out. Like, how about you lay off me? No, you need to find another one. Like,
yep.
Like, fuck off. Like, honestly. But that's the way that job is, and I could not deal with that with my personality type. There may be some people that are really thrive with that. There are people that really thrive in that environment, but it's not me. I'm more of a puzzle solving, problem solving kind of guy, and that's kind of what I do, which I'm thankful for. But I will never go back to sales ever again. I can honestly say that, and that's part of why I don't want to own my own restaurant. You have to be a salesperson too. Right?
Yeah.
If you own your own business, you have to be a salesperson, and I didn't want to be a salesperson anymore. So, that's all I have to say. How about you?
Yeah, I think I'm good.
Cool. That is the show for this week. We want to thank all of our fans who contributed questions. This was a good one, obviously. Please keep us supplied with awesome topics of your own via the YouTube and Soundcloud pages. While there, please give us thumbs ups, likes, and 5-star ratings on iTunes. It helps promote and spread awareness of the show, and any bit of encouragement helps keep the show going. You can also catch us on Tuesdays for our sister podcast, Corrective Consciousness, the in-depth look at this week in our lives. Finally, you can friend me as vysethebold on pretty much anything out there. Just give me a heads up and let me know who you are.
And you can follow me on my YouTube channel, Lotus Prince. You can hit me up on Twitter at Lotus Prince. And finally, if you are interested in seeing my videos early, getting in on exclusive live streams, selecting upcoming games for me to Let's Play, or getting in conversations with me and other patrons on Discord, then perhaps consider swinging by my Patreon account, which can be found at patreon.com/LotusPrince.
Well, that's great. We will catch everybody on Tuesday then.
Until next time, everyone.
Bye-bye.